Check this out. It is Sunday. We haven't been back here since Tuesday. Still got a lot of snow in here at the marina. Check that out. There's the ice cap in the marina. And it looks like it's starting to thaw. Yay! Hold on.
Oh.
Look at that. There's still some ice. And that is water. That is not ice.
Water flow.
And it's raining. And it's like 38 degrees outside. And it's high tide. Love high tide. Look at that. You can see the raindrops hit water, and there is the ice shelf. And we have icebergs.
Look at this side.
And we have no icebergs. And a partially frozen ice log. Much better than Tuesday. And we are free of the ice.
No snow.
No snow. Some ice crystals.
Oh, that's interesting. It's in the center.
Yeah,
All the way down. That's cool.
much better. Look at that. That is a good sign. The ice is going away. The frozen log is no longer frozen. There's the ice shelf. Now, at least it's high tide.
Oh, yeah.
Deep freeze 2022.
What?
This is 2022, right?
About to leave, already packing. Come with me, I'm not really asking. We'll get away to a place where we don't know. About to see the world in action, what we can be, life with no distractions. We'll get away, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Channel Surfing. Today's destination is the San Juan Islands and how we get there. Deception Pass versus Admiralty Inlet versus the Swinomish Channel. So in the San Juans, we spent a lot of time there in the summer. You guys have seen that from all our videos. So what's in the San Juans for us? So if you watched any of our videos in the past, yeah,
Heaven.
yeah. So there's lots of good marinas up there. Friday Harbor, Roach Harbor are all really popular. Fisherman's Bay with IMC and Lopez Island Resort are also really decent. For anchorages, we like Susha, we like Prevost a lot. We do a lot of shrimping up there around Spiden Island. There's good crabbing all through San Juans. There's plenty of other marinas and lots of harbors and stuff to go anchor and stuff for the night too. So in our boat, obviously we've got a 300 horse Yamaha on the back end of it. We cruise comfortably about 25 knots, and the Swinomish Channel is a 5 knot no wake zone through the entire channel. So we're destination boaters. So the RT27 fits really good for us. This actually enables us to get from Port of Everett into the San Juans in relatively short order. I mean, I can get from Friday Harbor to home in under 2 hours. I can get from Port of Everett to Roach Harbor in under 3 hours. So that's pretty good. Of course, it requires flat water and stuff to do that, right? Obviously, if it's 2 or 3 foot seas, I can't really go all that. Can't go as fast, but and it's a lot of waterway we pass too. So the the conditions change quite a bit as we traverse through there. So I pay a lot of attention looking at the weather. Primarily for weather, I use windy, on my phone, looking at the speed of the wind, because that'll equate to how bad the seas will look. About 45 nautical miles. Either of the 3 ways we go, distance is about the same.
And I guess if people are just now watching it, haven't watched any of our videos, we're in Everett Marina.
Yeah. So 3 ways we have to go. Obviously, my first choice is always Deception Pass, and then my second choice is Admiralty, and my third choice is Swinomish. And we'll go into more details as we go through this presentation.
Well, my favorite is Deception Pass. That would be my number one. And then not Admiralty Inlet, Swinomish Channel. The reason is Admiralty Inlet is always bumpy. Not meaning that it's 3 or 4 foot seas. It just beats you up and it feels like somebody karate chop you.
Does that go again? Karate chop?
Karate chop.
So I hate the Swinomish because it's so long. Swinomish is by far the scenic and the slow boat.
But I can make lunch or I can make breakfast.
Right, you got to time Swinomish around one of those events because you're there for a while. So Deception Pass is about 35 nautical miles. It's about an hour and a half, about 25 gallons of gas to get there. This is what Deception looks like once you're there. It's a big bridge that goes over. It's about 135 foot deep going through. It's a pretty deep channel. But at peak current, it can get upwards of about 9 knots. Generally, it runs peaks at about 7. Admiralty Inlet's about 42 nautical miles. It's a little bit further than Deception. So it takes, a couple extra minutes to go through there. Burns a little bit more fuel. The big challenge with Admiralty is going to be weather and commercial traffic, shipping lanes. It's not nearly as interesting either to traverse there. It's very pretty on the scenic side. Lots of you see the mountains and stuff. Here's a picture of Mount Rainier off to our stern. We were heading north through Admiralty. And then of course you get all the shipping traffic too. And then Swinomish Channel is my least favorite, just because how slow it is. And the south end is actually kind of treacherous, in my opinion, with how shallow it gets, especially at low tide. And the whole channel is very narrow too. But it is really pretty going through Swinomish. Several bridges you got to go through, and lots of cool looking houses and stuff on the shoreline. Here's the sandbar, part of the sandbar in the south end. So let's talk about Deception. All right, this is my favorite way to go, but I've got some pretty stringent rules I gotta look at to decide if I can go through Deception or not. The first one being, when can I go through the pass? It's not whenever I want. I've got to look at what time. I call it when's my gate open, right? And then of course, once you get through Deception, all right, and I'm going to say I'm heading to the San Juans, I need to make sure that the Rosario Straits and the Straits of Juan de Fuca are okay water to pop my nose out into, right? Because it's very protected water on the east side of Deception, inside Saratoga Passage. How do I figure out the current for Deception Pass? I pay no attention to the tides for Deception Pass. Slack high tide, slack low tide is not going to get you the time that you need to be through there. As I said before, Deception can peak upwards of 9 knots, and you don't really want to be there at 9 knots. Martin's rule, 4 knots or less in either direction, and I'll go through there without hesitation. I have done safely Deception Pass 6.5 knots going into the current, and I've done 7 knots with the current, just to see what it was like. Now, 7 knots with the current, things happen really fast, because if the current's moving 7 knots, you have to be going substantially faster than that to keep water going over your control plane, so that way you have steerage and stuff. So, I mean, you're doing... If the boat's doing 25 knots plus a 7 knot current, I mean, you're moving through there at over 30 knots. The going 6.5 knots into the current was actually worse, and it may have just been the direction that we were heading. We were going from we were heading east through in both instances, but you'll get some back eddies will form. It looks almost like whitewater rapids on the north side of the pass. It moves you around, and you've got to go through there with authority. You've got to have, you're not slow boating through deception with those currents. I mean, you're up on plane using the throttle. And it'll bounce you around and stuff. It's no joke. So, result of all this, a lot of people, are scared of deception. And I say, don't be scared of it. Just respect it. Right. So Martin's rule for going through deception is 4 knots or less in either direction. I don't care. I'll go through it without hesitation as long as the weather's good. Right. And the reason I kind of came up with that is once it starts getting above 4 knots, you'll start to see the back eddies form and stuff. But at under 4 knots, it's fairly tame to go through and pretty easy, and it's not a struggle, and it's comfortable for the passengers. And LaZina does not like 6.5 or 7 knots going through it.
Nay. She does not. That's really LaZina's rule is 4 or under.
Right, that's what when I say my gates open, that's what I mean. I actually prefer to avoid slack current and time it so that I'm actually going through there at about 2 to 4 knots. Main reason is there's less water traffic. There's less watercraft going through there at 2 to 4 knots. Most of your sailboats and stuff like that, they're going to wait on either entrance for slack to go through there. So when it gets to 2 to 4 knots, that's really easy for me to go through. It's the water is still fairly flat. I run through there at 25 knots on plane all the time, 2 to 4 knots. Maybe there's another, 1 or 2 power boats going through there with us. So in Deception Pass, you have to pay attention to the current, not the tide tables. The tide tables will lead you astray because slack high tide does not align with slack current. Going through deception, and since deception can peak upwards of 9 knots, it generally peaks in the daytime around 7ish, but it can on a rare occasion I've seen it go as high as 9. Martin's rule is 4 knots or less in either direction, and I'll go through it without hesitation. This is what I mean when I say the gate is open for me. Right, I'm looking for 4 knots or less.
I don't like to go through deception at slack. The reason for that is there's a lot of boats that have to go through there at slack. You think about all those sailboats and stuff that don't have a large motor to push them, so they're really waiting for 0 water, which is a short time frame for deception to be there. So if I wait till actual slack, then there's a lot of boat traffic there. You're going to go through it slow.
And I think that's more treacherous than 4 knots or under.
But potentially. So generally when I'm trying to time when I should be there, I'm really looking for 2 to 4 knots. Most of the videos that you've seen, if you've watched any of our past videos where you see us going through deception, it's usually 2 to 4 knots in those pictures because that's what I'm targeting to go through there.
I've actually gone through deception 6.5 knots into the current. That was a very rough ride. It was flat as glass seas on both sides of the pass, but going through it, it was really bumpy. I want to say it was a 3 or 4 foot wave we ended up going down into and coming out of, and there was some back eddies forming on the north side, pulling the boat, towards the rocks and stuff. It just wasn't pleasant. 7 knots with the current. I was doing almost wide open throttle through there, and we were moving. Put it that way. Our speed over ground was pretty good. You have to, right? I mean, you've got to have water moving under the boat to have control. So because of that, we're recreational boaters. I don't want to put myself in any white knuckle situations and stuff. So 4 knots or less, super easy, super comfortable. Passengers and guests and the Admiral on board, prefers that. So that's what we do. I'll throw this out there too. Somewhere I read years ago, like a recommendation for how fast can the current be for your boat to handle it. And they say to take your wide open throttle speed and divide it by 3, and that's how much current you can safely navigate through. So on channel surfing, that would be 11 knots since our wide open throttle is about 33. People will say you can go through deception, no problem on RT-27 outboard, no matter what the speed of the current is. And I would agree with that, but having done 6.5 and 7 knots, it is a very different experience going through Deception at 6.5 or 7 knots as opposed to 4 knots or less. So using eye tides, the way I figure out 4 knots or less, it not only gives me the peak and the slack, times, but it also lets me walk the curve so that I can identify when the current is expected to be less than 4 knots. So in this example, from 7 in the morning until 10 in the morning, a 3-hour window, it will be less than 4 knots. So that gives me a 3-hour time frame that I know I can get through there. Looking at the app, I took this little video animation to show you how this works. This is one of the things I really like about eye tides, is I can just walk it and say, okay, so on August 6th of last year, from 7 to 10 in the morning, it was less than 4 knots. And again, from 2 to 4:15 in the afternoon, it was less than 4 knots. So there's my 2 gates for the day, and I have to plan my trip around that. And if there's no way for me to align my schedule with those 2, then I'd be looking at Admiralty Inlet or Swinomish to get around it. One other thing with iTides is it's only supported on iPhone or iPad. For Android, I've not found a decent compromise yet. So if anybody knows of a Tides and Current app on Android that will actually let you do this, just to figure out what the current is at any point of the day, please leave it in the comment section below. I'd really like to know that for Android. In this picture here, there are days that the Deception Pass is open all day. In this case, both peak current is less than 4 knots. So in this case, my gate's open all day, and I don't have to do as much planning to run through it. So let's look at what 2 knots of current is like through Deception. And let's go ahead and check out what 3.5 knots of current looks like. So in this one, there's a boat coming. There looks maybe a 20 or 22 foot, maybe a 24 foot. He's coming. He's heading straight in. So there's a little bit of his wake that I have to kind of go through, but most of the rapids you see me go through and stuff are actually from Deception, not necessarily from him. And then at 4 knots, this is a still shot of what it starts to look like. That's when you start to see, some turbulence and stuff really get bad. We have gone through Deception in the fog. This is a picture of it. You may think, oh my God, that's crazy to go through Deception Pass in the fog. Well, I'm not doing 25 knots through Deception Pass in the fog. The backstory on this, we were coming back from Roach Harbor, spent a few days up there, and it was foggy. All through San Juan's, it was fog. We come out from Thatcher into Rosario, and I mean, you couldn't see anything. We got radar and stuff like that, but you can't go that fast still, right, in the fog. So I was faced with, what do I do? Do I go through Deception in the fog, or do I go south through Admiralty? It's wide open water, but it's going to be foggy the entire way, just like this. So my thought was, looking at the land masses around, I was like, I bet you the land mass here is going to hold the fog back, and the east side of Deception hopefully would have a lot less fog because of that. And about a mile through this picture, just to the east side of Deception, once we got through it, visibility opened up to about 1 to 2 miles. It was way better on the other side, so it was a good call to go through here. But I had to check the currents real quick, and fortunately, I hit it actually right at slack. There was almost no water movement when it came through Deception. We had timed it just perfect, so I was only doing 4 or 5 knots to run through here, just because of the fog. In Saratoga Passage, this also is another caveat with deception. Stay within the buoys. There's a channel here. It's a wide channel, and I'm going to say it's 60-ish or so foot deep. Plenty of water there. But 2.5 miles from the channel to the shoreline, from your boat, it will look like flat water. But that water is like a foot or less deep. It's all tide flats, depending where the tide's at. Really important to pay attention to those buoys, pay attention to your chart plotter, stay within the channel. And because of the narrow channel and all the tide flats, there's a lot of boat traffic up through this stretch of waterway. So a lot of other boat wakes and stuff like that to pay attention to as well. So Admiralty Inlet, it's a little bit further than Deception Pass. So it's another, call it another 20 minutes, maybe another half an hour.
So let's talk about Admiralty Inlet. So for Admiralty, my decision on that is if the gate to Deception's not open at any time, and I need to get to the San Juans,
Swinomish, woo!
then Admiralty is my pick, right? Swinomish is literally twice as long. It's an hour, hour and a half to get through, through Deception. It's probably about an hour. Well, add probably 15-20 minutes to do Admiralty instead, because a little bit further. Swinomish, you double that time. Swinomish is over 3 hours. But anyway,
to do Admiralty as opposed to Deception. Admiralty, I don't have to worry about the current of Deception, obviously, right? But I do have to worry about the weather in Admiralty Inlet and the weather at the Straits of Juan de Fuca. Generally speaking, once I go through Admiralty, I'm going to end up cutting right through the middle of the Straits of Juan de Fuca to get to south end of Lopez Island or San Juan Island. I usually end up going through Cattle Pass between San Juan Island and Lopez Island. Also, you got to be mindful of the VTS. Let's talk about that. So VTS is a vessel traffic system. It's basically a shipping lane, right? It's a virtual highway on the waterway. And it's controlled by the U.S. Coast Guard. It's obviously dedicated just for commercial ships.
They cross the VTS, but do so obviously, right? We are not, as recreational boaters, we are not allowed to hang out in the VTS. So just cut straight across it, right? Everybody's running radar out there. The Coast Guard is, the commercial craft are. You don't need to call them on the radio or talk to them or anything like that.
No, they're watching you. If you're too long, they yell at you.
Yeah, they're watching what you're doing. They see your speed. They see your direction, and stuff. So if you need to cross the VTS, then just cross it and make it obvious that that's what you're doing.
If you use your auto guidance on your chart plotter to plot a course through Admiralty Inlet, it will almost always plot like the shortest path, which will run you in the VTS, and your auto guidance will have you hang out in the VTS for way too long. So through this, I actually have to do a manual route, and I've got one programmed in on my chart plotter that is saved permanently. So I just reuse it over and over again. To call it up, because it basically runs on the shoulder of the VTS. As you see, I've got depicted here with my waypoint 6, 7, 8, 9. That's effectively what I do to navigate through.
You can be on either side, depends what the weather's like, which side I'll hang out on. But as LaZina says, Admiralty is always bumpy. I've never had a smooth ride through there.
It's not that it's necessarily scary. I just don't. It's like a.
Yeah, there's some tide rips that run through there, and it's a good stretch of waterway too. I mean, you're in it for like an hour, right, hour and a half for the distance. So.
And Deception Pass, you're like 5 minutes of that.
Right, Deception Pass is quick to go through it, and then the Saratoga passage and stuff is fairly well protected.
And it's really pretty. It's really pretty boat ride through there.
Yeah, and there's no commercial craft really that go up and down Saratoga. Very little anyway.
I didn't think about that, but that's the extra bonus.
Mm-hmm.
So pay attention to the VTS. Watch out for the commercial craft. There's a couple ferries that cross through this. There's fog. I run into quite a bit of fog through Admiralty Inlet as well. To be advised of that. Radar comes in real handy there. And here again, just stay out of the VTS so the Coast Guard doesn't get angry with you. This is the possession bar buoy. There's always a lot of good wildlife and stuff on Admiralty. It's very pretty to drive through there too. Swinomish Channel. This is the slowest way to get up there.
My least favorite. her second favorite. So the Swinomish Channel is the most protected route from weather. The problem with the Swinomish is it's about 8 nautical miles long, and it's a no-wake zone the entire time, which is 5 knots. It's clearly posted that now.
The south end of the Swinomish is also very shallow and narrow at low tides. But it is also the most protected route from the weather. So if I was in the San Juans and I needed to get home and the weather was getting bad, so I couldn't really get through the Straits of Juan de Fuca, which would preclude me getting to Deception or Admiralty, then all I got to do is make it across Rosario Strait, stay in Anacortes, and then from there I can come down the Swinomish and get into protected water all the way back home.
Also really important when you're approaching, from Saratoga, when it makes the turn to head east into the Swinomish Channel, stay within the buoys and watch that rock wall. There are no shortcuts. If it looks like a shortcut,
If you say, "Oh, look, a shortcut."
No, there are no shortcuts to that waterway. Anything that's a shortcut is going to put you up on the rocks.
Looking at the Swinomish in a little bit more detail, here's the narrow channel. It runs right up by La Conner. And it's a no wake through most of this because it's got, first off, it's narrow and there's houses on the shore and, obviously La Conner there and some other stuff. That south end, if you look at it, it's got rocks and stuff on the south side and a sandbar on the north side. And that channel, I bet you, is not even 100 yards wide on that south end. There's range markers, which are kind of cool if you're heading south through Swinomish. I always use the range markers. You just line the two of them up so one's in front of the other, and it'll keep you dead center in the channel. But definitely stay within the buoys. You cannot be outside of the buoys on this south end of the Swinomish, or you will run aground. So here's the south end. Let's take a look at that. And then here's the sandbar on the south end I was talking about. And this is at high tide. It's a 7-foot tide right now for the sandbar when this video was taken.
As they say, brown is brown. The low tide, you can walk right there. That's a big sandbar. We're at high tide. It's only a 7-foot tide. You can see that log is sitting there. That's sitting on the ground. So just a quick recap, my 3 choices, I would always go with Deception Pass first because it's about an hour and a half to get there. I would do Admiralty second. She'd be telling me, she'd be kicking me on the tail to do Swinomish instead. And here and again, Deception, what I'm looking for is the current. When is my gate open? And can I align that with my plans, right? For leaving to get through there. So I've got to back the time out and say, okay, if this is the time window I want to hit the Deception, when do I actually have to leave Everett to make it there in time? Admiralty Inlet, it doesn't matter on the time. All that matters is the weather, as usual. But here and again, it's the Straits of Juan de Fuca weather that I care about the most going through Admiralty.
Wouldn't you say maybe 80% of the time we go Deception Pass?
About that, yeah.
Because it's very rare that Deception is, we can time it to be what we want it to be to go through that. Admiralty Inlet, there's really no timing. You just look at the weather, and if it's icky out, you probably don't go. Yeah, most
of the time we end up hitting Deception. But there are a few times, like if I've got reservations in a marina, based on when I can leave, sometimes there's not a gate that opens in a timely fashion for Deception. But Admiralty, all I care about is the weather to get through there. And then the Swinomish Channel, obviously, is the slow road. And you can do Swinomish, anytime. There's no real negative to going through Swinomish other than just the time it takes to go through it.
And then Swinomish Channel being my third, which usually I would use this when there's, weather has come in and I want to get home from the San Juans. Then all I got to do is get from San Juans across Rosario Straits over to Anacortes, and then I can jump down into Swinomish. And it's, like I said, it's fairly protected waters from Swinomish all the way back home.
Well, let's talk about, so those of you that aren't in our private R27 outboard group, we have a channel surfing Facebook. These are both Facebook pages. We have Instagram. We also just did a website. So it's letsgochannelsurfing.com. So that's, I think, where Martin and I can put everything kind of in one spot, because when he gets contacted by people for information or asking him questions, he's got to say, did I post that at Tugnut's blog? Where did I post that on R27? And try to find that. So if we can just put it in a more informative for you guys to find the information you want.
The web page is pretty instrumental because on the web page, a lot of the technical write-ups that I've done for the upgrades, I've posted there so you guys can read those. I've posted a lot of the photographs that show the real-world performance, stats that I get off the instrumentation. We have links to our YouTube videos there. Things, the components that I bought for the upgrades. I've got links to the manufacturer web pages all posted on the website. It's just a single source to go to bring all of the information together, instead of me being so spread out.
It also has a tab for all of our affiliate links.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't cost you anything else. You're just helping us out. We get a little tiny little percentage.
Gas money. Looking for gas money.
For advertising these things. And then, what's the other thing? We do have, if you want to support us at all in our little adventures here, I do have a shop tab where I've designed funny boat shirts. We have some channel surfing stuff.
Mm-hmm. Channel surfing hat.
Yep, some throw pillows for your boat, nautical stuff, coffee cups. So it's all a work in progress. We're just learning as we go. Mm-hmm. So if you have any suggestions, stuff you like, stuff you don't like, feel free to put it in the comments and let us know. Mm-hmm. But go check it out. Mm-hmm. We're pretty proud of it. Took us a long time to get it together.
Let's go channelsurfing.com.
Yep. That's it. Mm-hmm. So thanks for watching our video. And don't forget to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell for notification. And what did I forget?
Stay tuned for more
channel surfing.
Thanks.
Bye.